Greetings and salutations, friends. Character NPC back at the gaming table. Today, friends, with monumental news, game-changing news in the wargaming, hex and counter wargaming industry. It's been announced that Europa is back in 2026. My Christmas wish. I don't know if anybody actually saw my last video. By the numbers, probably not. But hey, it doesn't really matter. I thought, man, wouldn't it be awesome if somebody started putting these games back out? It was my Christmas wish. It was like a major award. If you watch The Christmas Story, my family does during the holidays, it was like the major award from Fragile. A dream come true. So here, the first email that I got was January 8th from classiceuropa.groups.org. I don't know if anybody's familiar with that that's watching this, but John Astle, I think is how you pronounce his last name, who was one of the designers of, I think he did A Winter War. I think he was one of the main designers or developers. Anyway, he was influential back when it was GRD, and he owns and runs this Classic Europa.groups.io. So if you're familiar with Consim or some of those other forum boards, that's what that is. So this was an email that I received. Europa Series Wargames relaunches the Europa Series. Bloomington, Illinois, January 7th, 2026. Europa Series Wargames ESW announces its official launch today, with its goal to revitalize the award-winning Europa series of World War II wargames. Europa is the most ambitious wargame project ever. On a map some 10 by 12 feet, it reproduces World War II in Europe and nearby lands in incredible detail. Our mission is to republish the existing games in digital and print format, to create new and updated Europa games, and to see the Europa series completed as its founders envisioned, end quote, said Mark Miller, ESW Interim Executive Officer. How about that? That is incredible. That really is a dream come true. Mark is a co-designer of Unentscheiden and Their Finest Hours. If you're not familiar with Unentscheiden, that was the original Scorched Earth. That was, after Fire in the East. Drang Knock Austin, Drive East. That's what the first part was called. So ESW has use of the Europa trademark and copyrights from owner Paul R. or Rich Banner, who is co-designer of Drang Knock Austin. Right. So the original Europa game and the original Monster game, it is accredited as being the original Monster. And other Europa titles published by Game Designers Workshop. I can't express enough how pleased I am that the Europa series will continue, said Rich. Mark also announces the appointment of veteran Europa experts to key ESW positions, so they're formalizing that this is really going to happen. John M. Astle as chief designer. John contributed to the design or development of over a dozen Europa games and modules, including award-winning or best-selling titles Scorched Earth in '87, Origins Award for Best Board Game, 1900 and 1946 category. That's like the Golden Globes right there, or your Emmy or Grammy or whatever. And Second Front. Man, I've never seen Second Front. I'd love to get it, but they want so much money in the used market, it's ridiculous. So hopefully we'll see a reasonably priced copy coming out of all of this. John is also appointed interim editor of the Europa Series Briefing, a soon-to-be-launched magazine. I've talked in some of my videos about the Europa magazine. So they're going to relaunch a magazine, which is awesome, because that's really how the community gets involved, I think. And you see how broader it is than just a series of games for sale. Devoted to the Europa series, this soon-to-be-launched magazine called Europa Series Briefing. Another quote, I have designed Europa games for 40 years. This must be John Astle talking. My immediate goal is to reimagine the Fire in the East experience as Barbarossa Unleashed. Nice. A working title, he says. The ultimate Europa East Front wargame. That would be great to see. Bill Stone as Chief Resource Officer. Bill provided GDW and the Europa Series with business direction, marketing advice, publishing, computerization, and playtesting. I'm thrilled to see Rich and Mark assemble a team to handle reprinted, updated, and new games and modules with the goal of integrating each component of the series into the ultimate Grand Europa package. That was always the dream. ESW announces that the Classic Europa group, so John Astel's forum, is now the official home of news and information about Europa Series of Wargames, as well as the authorized source for canonical errata clarifications, and explanations regarding maps, counters, and rules in an old, new, and upcoming Europa games. So really awesome to see. For more information, it talks about here. You can see that for yourself. EuropaSeries@gmail.com. EuropaSeries@gmail.com. And then, after that, that was earth-shattering enough. Then a couple of weeks later, I get this one. January 13th, to clarify and expand the news release of January 8th from Europa Series Wargames. Here is further information about what's going on. Now, get this. This is pretty cool. I hope this is in focus and people can see this, but all right, summary. Rich Banner, owner of the trademark and copyrights, has authorized Europa Series Wargames, ESW, to handle all aspects of that intellectual property under the day-to-day management of Mark Miller with assistance from John Astel and Bill Stone. ESW and its licensees will produce reprinted, updated, and new games and modules. So, new things to come to complete that whole Grand Europa. Rich will be assigning ownership. I was paraphrasing there if you're not keeping up. Rich will be assigning ownership of the IP to a separate Europa Series Wargames Foundation in order to ensure long-term viability and stability for the series under the guidance of directors who are also experienced Europa enthusiasts. That really has meaning there, because part of what I think happened with D&D was an IP fight, intellectual property, right? And how things become legal, and who wants to do things legally or not. Details. Europa Series Wargames, ESW, is the name of the business entity in place to handle operations related to the use of Rich Banner's Europa trademark and copyrights. Rich is the owner of the intellectual property, but he is not currently in a position to run day-to-day operations. See Mark's recent post in that regard, and here's a link to that message if you're interested. I think you can read it, but maybe I'll put it in the description or something. That job falls to Mark Miller as interim executive officer of ESW. So Mark Miller is basically going to run the business. Mark is currently supported by John Astel as chief designer and Bill Stone as chief resources officer. We anticipate a couple of other longtime Europa enthusiasts coming on board soon. Stay tuned. ESW has the rights and ability to reprint, update, and produce Europa games, modules, and other products in both print and digital format. So ESW has all the rights to everything in the past and anything in the future. ESW also has the ability to license other game companies and hobbyists to do the same. Let me read that again. ESW also has the ability to license other game companies and hobbyists to do the same. This is what's cool in my book, all of this from here to the end. To encourage a wide range of non-commercial products, enthusiasts will find a very liberal fair use policy to be presented here soon. Because it has been, over the past, at least 5 years, really. I think a lot of people have been making their own games, and how to recreate those past histories that we all loved that seemed to be dead and forgotten and gone. It was just caught up in the court system, I guess. As to specific games, John has already mapped out the basic plan, always subject to change, of course, for new and updated games and modules. So great to hear. Right now, Barbarossa Unleashed, a working title, is in the works as the official new edition of Fire in the East, and it currently takes priority over all research, design, development, and production resources. See John's recent explanation of his Barbarossa Unleashed BU intentions, and it has the message here. Another link. At this point, we should mention that ESW is not involved with Total War, which was the last HMS release that was seemed to be a debacle. I won't get into it. I don't know all the legal manners in it, but it did seem to end Europa as I knew it. Which remains in the hands of HMS. I was elaborating there before, and is subject to the decisions of HMS. There is no specific timeline for release of Barbarossa Unleashed. ESW absolutely does not and will not have a business department pressuring the creative team to hurry up and release a game before it's ready in order to meet a deadline or pay bills. Likewise, although it is possible that at some point ESW might utilize Kickstarter or a similar tool to facilitate production, we don't intend to take money from players for vaporware. We don't like being ripped off, and we won't be ripped off anymore. We are currently experimenting with a variety of avenues for making products available, especially digital products. See Wargame Vault. For the most part, we anticipate ESW will be a direct-to-consumers operation, which is the same as GMT or anybody else. Lamentations of the Flame Princess. Cutting out middlemen such as wholesalers, sales reps, and retailers. We plan to soon launch the ESW Briefing, a magazine much along the lines of the Europa magazine, that's what TEM stands for, published at irregular intervals as circumstances permit. So they're not dedicated to like some timeline. We don't expect to take money for subscriptions. Cool. Individual PDFs will be available for free or at a very moderate price. Hard copies can be purchased via print on demand. A few words about the trademark and copyrights for Europa and the individual games are also in order. At this moment, Rich Banner owns all that intellectual property. He has generously agreed to hand over the IP to a non-profit foundation designed to oversee the future of Europa. Cool. The Europa Series Wargames Foundation, separate from the ESW business entity. That's interesting and very specific. As being set up even as we write this and should be in place by the end of February. The Foundation's initial directors will be Mark, John, and Bill, with more to come if and when appropriate. They will be tasked with making decisions about Europa to keep it alive and growing via ESW. The business side, right? Licensed products and an expanding ecosystem of fair use material. Wow. How can you fail with a model like that? Mark, John, and Bill are old, mostly retired, and I'm going to stop here for a moment. I think this is a really important matter in all of what's happening and all the things I'm doing in my life that I like. Like I build and fly model planes, but everybody who's in the AMA and, like we're constantly seeking out younger kids who want to learn how to fly model planes and stuff. I could talk all day about that. Same with the Astronomy Club. It's a bunch of old guys, and as we continue to get old and there's no young folk around, then they're not picking up the mantle and carrying it forward. I think the same holds true for Wargames, and we could get ourselves into a rut if we don't have the GMTs and the people who play Europa and have, are dedicated enough to continue on for 50 years, Anyway, I digress here. We're all getting old. None of us are getting any younger. Yes, so Mark, John, and Bill are old, mostly retired, and don't require income based on Europa's intellectual property. For the time being, all profits generated by that IP will flow to Rich Banner in order to assist him as he faces his medical challenges. So there's even a good cause in all of this. These guys are going to work for free, and all the money's going to go to help Rich. Upon Rich's passing, all proceeds will accrue to the foundation and be used to further its mission. So really, I can't think of a cooler reason to have a good time and play war games with your friends. We can't promise miracles, but we strive to ensure this rebirth of the series means more and better Europa games and modules, more Europa players, and a little help for Rich, who was instrumental in bringing the system to life more than 50 years ago. Bill Stone. Yeah, man. It sounds amazing. I can't believe it. It's a Christmas wish come true. Make sure to check out classiceuropa.groups.io and get involved. It sounds like 2026 is really going to be a cool year for Europa and wargaming in general. So that's where I'll leave it. Take care. Stay tuned for more.